Sorry, I was muted. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Let's see. So welcome. We're excited to have you here for our 8th Mindful Engagement session of 2020. My name is Kathleen and Natalie. Both she and I will be coordinating today's session. Our teachers, Hugh, Kaira, Lingo, and George Kinder designed this series to offer support to everyone who's concerned with the state of our world and seeks to engage in it mindfully. For today's session, Hugh, our teacher, trainer, and author on mindfulness and compassion, along with George, will be joining us specifically today. And Kaira, she was unable to be with us. She's visiting her father, but she will be here for the next month's session. And today's title of this session is Action Absorbs Anxiety. This session will begin with a brief welcome, a guided meditation, and then a brief discussion, and a brief talk, by Hugh, and then a guided meditation. And then George will share some thoughts of his, as well as a song. We'll then put folks into a breakout group for sharing. If we stay a pretty small group, maybe we'll just stay open. Hugh and I can kind of bounce off and see how that works. If we do breakout sessions and you prefer not to participate, that's totally fine, and you can wait in the main session room with me. And then after the breakout sessions, if that's where we go, Hugh will then help facilitate a group discussion. And then we'll finish with some closing remarks and then a preview of the upcoming session for next month. These sessions are offered in the spirit of generosity, and everyone is welcome to participate. For those who can, we invite you to offer a donation to support the teachers and the ongoing programs. Links to give via Venmo and PayPal will be shared by Natalie in the chat at the beginning and at the end. Donations are equally shared among the teachers. To help us build community, we can encourage you to use your video. Please rename yourself with your preferred pronouns and where you are joining us from if you'd like. These sessions are being recorded and will be shared with all that register a few days later, along with the resources that might be brought up in the discussion. To keep outside noise at a minimum, we ask that you please mute your microphone, and then you can unmute yourself when you're called upon. And when you do share, please do so mindfully and practicing respect and empathy. We also encourage the use of group chat throughout the discussion. Feel free to share your excitement, your concern, your gratitude, any resources that you think might be helpful to others. And with that, I turn it over to Hugh to start the session.
Thank you, Kathleen, and welcome everyone. It's lovely to see you all and to be together today. As Kathleen mentioned, welcome George and Natalie, and lovely to have you here sharing this with us, this time together. What I'd like to do, and what I'd like this to be as much as possible today, is kind of a time for sharing and reflection. What I'll share to begin with is a kind of my feelings and understanding about where we are and what we're facing in these times, and how our practice and our community of being together with others, how this can really fortify us and strengthen us in these times, so that we can both moderate and modulate and kind of balance our own responses, so that we don't get, freaked out, overly freaked out about what's going on. It's right for us to be concerned, and we should be anxious. I was just thinking today, in our local community, a number of you are part of the Insight Meditation community and the Center for Mindful Living. Tom Friedman in the New York Times, a columnist, had an op-ed today, and one of the members who, was very, read it, and it was like, oh my God, how do we respond? You know, because it was a very, very serious. He was kind of ringing a bell. If you haven't seen it, we'll share it. But I haven't read it. But he was really ringing a bell of kind of saying, be alarmed about where things are and the dangers where, you know, this time we're in right now. And any of us who sat through the debate last night will probably have had our blood pressure raised significantly. You know, I think it was a very disconcerting experience from, you know, having to sit through it. And it didn't hold American democracy up in a shining light, you know. And so the theme today, I think, feels very relevant, and the theme is action absorbs anxiety, because it's really very, very easy for us with everything that's going on. We're concerned. We want to make a difference. We want to ensure that things move in a direction that seems, you know, positive, beneficial, you know, serving the well-being of all, and not, you know, leading to, you know, cruelty and suffering. And so we're rightly concerned, and there's just, particularly nowadays with the internet and just all the information coming in, it's like, you know, some of you think that expression of kind of drinking from a fire hose. You know, it's like all of this coming in, and it can feel overwhelming, and it can heighten fear and anxiety. And so the theme today of action absorbing anxiety, it's really a way of saying we can skillfully redirect fears and worries and anxiety and anger towards action that will serve to help move us towards what we care about most deeply. That doing that, it kind of takes the heat and the energy and the juice out of the fears and the anxiety and all of these other challenging emotions. So what I'd like to do is just to kind of lay out a framework, and much of what I'll be sharing will be probably uncontroversial and will be familiar to all of us. But I think it's important, valuable to name it, because even when not even, but when we're in the midst of things, particularly difficult situations, it's often difficult to really stand back and kind of get a deeper feel about what's going on, because we're right in the middle of it. And, you know, we've all heard about the frog in water, you know, and if the frog is in warm water, if it's put in hot water, boiling water, it'll jump straight out. But if the temperature is gradually increased, it'll just stay there, because it's not able to kind of register that difference with a sense of urgency. And so it's important, I think, to name and acknowledge, you know, where we are and how unprecedented this time is that we're living in. And what I want to say is, I want to just name just some ways in which these times are really unprecedented, and also that these times generate fear and anxiety and uncertainty, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to feel these emotions and mind states, but what makes all the difference is how we respond to them. You know, do we respond with balance, with mindfulness, with awareness, with kindness, or do we just kind of, you know, go into our heads and get freaked out and catastrophize, oh, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. And then when we do that, we're not really capable of being a helpful response, being a wise actor in the midst of all of this. So if it's our intention and our goal to be supportive of others and ourselves and our world in these times, it's really incumbent upon us to come back to our practice, to come back to our bodies, come back to our breath, come back to awareness of our emotions and of our thoughts, so that we don't just get pulled along, swayed by, dragged along by whatever the energies of the world are, So I want to highlight some of the things that are about these times that are particularly difficult, and point to the ways in which our practice of mindfulness and cultivating compassion, loving kindness, equanimity can help us stay balanced and connected and resilient in these times. And obviously I'm going to stress particularly the way in which taking action, getting actively involved in wise and compassionate action can help alleviate stress and worry. So just to name the most obvious thing, we're in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, the most serious in 100 years. 1 million people have now died worldwide, to over 206,000, I think, in the United States. And the virus has had a huge impact on all our lives. Tens of millions of people have lost their jobs. Many, many thousands of businesses have gone under. And people's situations, probably all of our situations, have changed drastically. Many have lost loved ones. Many have had to curtail, activities. Everybody's had to curtail activities in certain ways, but some people even more so just by virtue of age and underlying conditions, just to be more isolated. Parents, many parents are working from home and also taking care of their kids, and being a school teacher on the side as well, and all of the stresses and pressures around that. And obviously, to name another thing, that we're not all affected in the same ways. Some people are affected in much more dire ways, whether in terms of health or in terms of financial situation, other things. And so it's natural and it's appropriate that that concern, anxiety arise given these conditions. If we look at the studies that currently showing that there's about 3 times the level of anxiety in American society from a year ago. So 3 times the levels of anxiety and depression. So on one hand, fear, worry coming up is natural. But if we don't deal wisely with these challenges, then we will, it will affect us in very significant ways. So there's fear, worry come up about, what's gonna, how's this going to unfold? How will it affect me, my family, my loved ones, my community? All of these are natural responses. And how we respond makes all the difference in the world. So that, in a way, that's kind of a broad context affecting our lives for the last 6 or 7 months, projected to go on, certainly into the middle of next year, maybe even longer. And so we're living with our lives very much, in upheaval. So it really calls on us to how do I respond? How do we respond to these, these challenges, these difficulties, these worries that are coming up? And then at the same time, we're also living through really another unprecedented kind of event situation, and that is an uprising for racial justice, where 4 centuries of injustice are being challenged, and millions of people have come out to protest, in the United States, in thousands of cities and villages and rural areas, and also worldwide, in response to the killing of African Americans and people of color by the police. And this long delayed reckoning has also intensified emotions. There's anger, and some of it has come out in terms of violence, even though the protests have been overwhelmingly peaceful. But anger comes up at the continued injustice. There's fear among people of color about their treatment at the hands of police. There's fear about how this is all going to play out, or is playing out in the political realm. Will it lead to strengthening the current president? Fears come up around that. There's also a lot of sadness and grief at the pain caused by the continued injustice and the history and the legacy of racial injustice. So that's also very much kind of in our bones, really. We're living that in the midst of this time of pandemic. And here in the US, we're at the height of the electoral season. I think 34 days away from election day. It's an election that's been called the most consequential since 1864. The last year of the full year of the Civil War. We know how important it is, this election, where I think many of us believe that if the current president were re-elected, that American democracy, this experiment in American democracy that I think so many of us hold as, very flawed, but always moving, bending the arc of history towards justice, that would be terribly impacted if that were the outcome of the election. And we've had the president continuously undermining the legitimacy of the election. So, as he said last night, saying mailed-in ballots can't be trusted, and that the only way he'll lose the election is if his opponents steal the election. And so a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety coming up around the elections, how that will all play out. And what I want to just also name is how it's been, for the last 3.5 years, the levels of fear and anxiety and stress that people have been living under, the impact of living in a country where, from the highest office in the land, 20,000 lies have been put out, according to the Washington Post, by the president. And they're being put out as though they're equivalent to the truth, so that we're living in a society where the highest authority in the land is saying things that aren't true and as though they were true, and as though some alternative version of reality is as valid as what we're all able to see and hear and experience. And there's a pain in that. There's a psychic pain, I think, in that. There's a kind of numbing to it that we experience. We also experience just the divisiveness, the way power has been used to divide people off from each other. And we know, and the teachings that we practice keep reminding us that whatever our differences are, our common community, really, what we have in common far outweighs our differences. And yet the differences about, how you vote, what you believe in, are taken as a way of dividing people up against each other, fueling your base of support, getting them revved up and angry and hateful towards the other, this otherizing, the people, that you disagree with him. And we've also experienced the way in which the policies that have been carried out have so many of them have been lacking in kindness and have been really cruel. I think the most obvious being the separation of families at the border, and the trauma imposed on vulnerable children and the pain on families, as well as so many other ways in which people's rights are being undercut and attacked. Just right, in the coming weeks of the attempt to take healthcare away from 20 million people by getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. So what I experience is that all of these things happening and living these things day by day by day, that we don't really have the opportunity to be able to really fully process all of the pain, all the sadness, the grief that we feel, or that we should be able to feel, to allow ourselves to feel. And for me, I believe we're living with a kind of unmourned grief. I think each one of us in our own way is carrying within us a lot of grief of things that we haven't been able to really process fully. The sadness, the grief, at the pain, at the division, at the dishonesty, at the cruelty. And there's really a psychic cost to that. There's a price we pay for that. So I'm naming these things, as we're all familiar with, to say that, when we're collectively experiencing all of this, and also individually, we have our own experiences of them in our own lives, in our own families. And it's natural for us to feel fear, to feel anxiety, grief, rage, anger, all of these emotions coming up. The key thing, if we're going to maintain balance, resilience, and be able to engage with others and be a force for good in the world, is to be able to respond wisely and kindly to what's coming up. And just to finish up, I want to name 3 key practices that can support us in these difficult times. The first is very familiar to us all, the practice of mindfulness, which allows us to hold our fears, our anxieties, our anger, and other emotions in awareness with kindness. We can allow ourselves to feel what's present in the body, feel our emotions, be aware of our thoughts without kind of following them wherever they go. And let it all come and go. Allow ourselves to open to, make space for all that's coming up, not push them away, but also not act them out in a reactive way. In this way, the practice allows us then to respond wisely and compassionately, because we're not being pulled along by this thing has happened or this piece of news, but we're able to take it in, respond, really transform it by opening fully to it. And then we can say, what is wise action? What is compassionate action? So that's the first. The second is we can cultivate open-hearted qualities of compassion, loving kindness, equanimity, forgiveness, gratitude that can help us shift out of reactivity and fear, and to really rest in kindness, to allow ourselves to live from kindness. And when we do that, it actually transforms the painful emotions. Research studies show that positive emotions, as they're sometimes called, joy, tranquility, happiness, actually neutralize negative emotions like anger, rage, etc. That we can't experience both of them at the same time. So if we're experiencing fear or anxiety or anger, if we can bring in loving kindness, we can bring in compassion, it actually transforms those painful emotions. And then when we're feeling kind, compassionate, caring, we don't otherize people. We don't turn them into, other, the kind of the unreal other, as Tara Brach uses that phrase. And we can stay connected with those that we differ from, we have different beliefs from. And we can express compassion towards all who are suffering. And when we cultivate equanimity, we don't get caught up in winning and losing, success and failure, gain and loss. We can stay balanced, even though, the news today may not be so good. We can recognize that things change, everything is impermanent. So that's the second, cultivating these wholesome states. And the third is choosing skillful ways of working with difficult emotions and mind states by taking action. That taking action by engaging in wise and compassionate action really does drain the energy away from the fear and the catastrophizing. So as an example, we're going to be, this Sunday, we're going to be, we have a group of, 50 or 60 people coming together to write letters to irregular voters, people who might not vote if they weren't encouraged and reminded. And everybody will be together on Zoom, and we'll be writing our own letters to 20 people in Texas or in Florida or in Arizona or in Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin, and encouraging them to get out to vote without talking about policies or particular leaders, but just how important it is that we vote. Because I believe strongly that, that if we can encourage everybody to vote, then we will be in the place to move back from the brink where we are right now, and to elect caring and compassionate leaders that can actually move us in a direction. It won't be perfect, but it will be away from division and cruelty and dishonesty towards an honest and caring way of living together and being together in society. And so what I'd like to do is to invite you to reflect, invite us all to reflect on what we can do, particularly in the next 35 days. And we'll have an opportunity to discuss this when after the meditation and after George has shared. And we'll just take a few minutes now for a meditation. There's a lot of information I shared, a lot of thoughts and views about things. I invite you to, if you'd like to close your eyes, just let your attention drop down out of the thinking mode, down into the body. Feel your body here in the space that you are. Feel the contact with the surface beneath you. Just check in with your body and emotions, your mind. Just notice what's present right now. We'll take a few minutes to just consciously relax the body and the mind. You might bring your awareness to your breathing right now. Notice if it's tight, short, or if it's deeper, longer. You might consciously invite your breath to deepen. Take a nice full deep in breath. Hold it for a moment and then release. Long, slow out breath. And again, nice full deep in breath, filling the lungs, filling the body with the breath. And releasing, relaxing, letting go on the out breath. So inviting the body to fill with the breath like you're inflating a balloon, bringing energy into the body and then relaxing, letting go, releasing as you breathe out. Inviting the mind and the body to relax and be at ease. You might invite a smile to your face. Activate the muscles at the corners of your eyes and the corners of your mouth. Consciously inviting a smile, maybe thinking of a loved one, somebody who easily makes you feel happy and joyful. Smile sends a message to our brain and to our nervous system that we can relax and be at ease. You might invite that smile down into your heart area. Down into your body. Take a moment to think of some things in your life that you feel grateful for. Gratitude helps to kind of pull us out of the fixation on what's wrong or what we lack. Reminds us, takes us back to what we already have. Loved ones, friends, our health, our practice, nature, all of these things. You might put your hand on your heart, maybe on your belly. Just connect with Connect with this life, this being, yourself, with care, with compassion. Us recognizing that we're living in a very challenging and unusual time, and that self-care, taking care of ourselves, is really essential for our well-being. And you might open to what you're experiencing right now and meet it with kindness, with care, with acceptance. Whatever's present, making space for this. Sharing again the words of Martha Postlethwaite in her poem Clearing. It says, "Do not try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is yours alone to sing falls into your open, cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue." And remembering the words too of Mother Teresa, we can't all do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. So reflecting on your intention for this time today, maybe reflecting too on your intentions over the coming weeks. How might you manifest what you care about most deeply? Thank you. And I'd like to pass it over to George for some reflections and a song. So however you'd like to take this next period, George.
Thank you, Hugh. Just really a few minutes. And first, just to thank you. I've been so looking forward to this. And what a time where we need the heart that Hugh brings so beautifully to his talk and his meditation. Particularly, I'm thinking of after last night. Just two things brought me to tears as Hugh was talking. One was his talking about the long delayed reckoning. What a beautiful reflection on the issue of racial justice. And then the unmourned grief. It's really deep and really true. So acknowledging that, I'm going to take us in a different direction, but I think related, and you'll see that, to the wisdom, first of all, to the wisdom of perhaps the greatest, certainly one of the 2 or 3 or 4 greatest Japanese Zen masters in the history of Japan. This was Zen Master Hakuin from the 17th century. And he revolutionized the teaching of the Zen koan, what is the sound of one hand clapping. So you can imagine this brilliant intellect and paradoxical thinker coming to the issue of the obstacles, the kind of obstacles that we face, that we're all feeling. So I'm going to share a paragraph that he wrote that is really beautiful and brilliant. And I want to give acknowledgement to Joan Luzier, who's on the call, because she was the one, I think she introduced this to me. I don't think it went the other direction, although Hakuin's been a major influence on mine. And then I want to move from this paragraph to something that we've done in our family, which I hope will bring a bit more joy perhaps, but also talking about the struggle. And it's a song, just a minute of a song that my daughter London and I wrote together as part of our COVID summer. We designed, co-wrote, sang, and produced an album of protest songs. And so I'm going to play you the song that it was influenced by, totally, as you'll see, by Hakuin. We really owe the debt to Hakuin. And in fact, the whole album is named Shine Through, which is the theme of Hakuin's paragraph. So this is from Hakuin's 4 Ways of Knowing. When you see something, shine through it. When you hear, shine through what you are hearing. Shine through the 5 skandhas. Shine through the 6 fields of sense perception. In front, behind, left, and right, through 7 calamities and 8 disasters. Become one with radiant vision of the whole body. See through all things, internal and external. Shine through them. When this work becomes solid, then perception of reality will be perfectly, distinctly clear, just like looking at the palm of your hand. At this point, while increasing the use of this clear knowing and insight, if you enter awakening, then shine through awakening. If you get into agreeable circumstances, shine through agreeable circumstances. If you fall into adverse situations, then shine through adverse situations. When greed or desire arise, shine through greed and desire. When hatred or anger arise, shine through hatred and anger. When you act out of ignorance, shine through ignorance. When the 3 poisons of hatred, greed, and ignorance are no more, and the mind is pure, shine through that pure mind. At all times, in all places, be it desires, senses, gain, loss, right, wrong, visions of the Buddha or of Dharma, in all things, shine through with your whole body. So that's the passage from Hakuin. And now I'm just going to take you to this. We've been very active as a family. I love the theme. action absorbs anxiety. And it was difficult. I'm 72 years old. My daughter, who you're going to see, is 16. And we wrote an album of protest songs, many of them with Buddhist themes of the environment. We've got the Donald in there in one of the songs pretty strongly, themes of racism. This is kind of an anthem to having courage in the struggle. And I'm just going to play the first minute or so of this, and you'll give you a chance to hear London as well. Sometimes when you're sharing a video, it doesn't work well on Zoom. Tolerate it the best you can. We're just going to do this for a minute and come back. I hope it will come through nicely. Can you see the two of us? Yes. All right, good. Well, let me see if I can play this. And here we go.
This song is called Shine Through, and it was written by George Kinder and London Kinder.
It looks like you muted at the top.
Let's go.
The weariness and doubt are near when plagued by our own greed or fear, surrounded by guns or slithering tongues. Shine, shine through. When your life is turned into a wreck and they put their knee on your neck, what you must do is shine through. Shine, shine through. When corruption stops you, shine through. When politicians block you, shine through. When thrown by delusion, shine through. When thrown by confusion, shine through.
So I think I'm just going to stop there. And sorry you missed London talking for a minute about the song, but it's all on YouTube if you want to see it. And it's, oh, thank you, Amy. And it's on Spotify, you know, the album's out there. And we're playing it at fundraisers, at political gatherings, and playing other songs. The one that's most popular right now is the one that's talking about COVID and racism and the Donald, and that's called The 15. But thank you, and Hugh, I think I want to turn it back to you, and enjoy. We'll share links for whoever would like to see it further.
Thank you, George. Thank you. And I think we have a choice to make. Would you say, Courtlaine? Let's see if we would like to stay in conversation in a full group, since we're not, you know, we have a not unwieldy number of people. If we wanted to do that, rather than breaking up into small groups, my inclination would be to do that today, is to stay and hear from each other. And good, Mary's voted, and I'm getting nods, and so we'll do that, which is great. I think we would now be breaking into groups, and so my thought would be to if you don't have any more words to add, George, to invite anybody to share if you have any questions that come up, any concerns, anything you're finding difficulty working with, any